Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My guest tonight is a realtor and businesswoman in Danville. She is a mother of three in the San Ramon Valley School District, and she is really just a pillar of the community who has really tried to express herself eloquently and in good faith on some of the worst communication platforms possible, but is still somebody who's hopeful and is somebody who I think has some very valuable things to say. And I wanted to make sure she had a platform to communicate these things, and she agreed to come in, and I couldn't have been more pleased with it. Without further ado, the woman, the myth, the legend, Erica Hobby. Listen, I don't want you to be worried about what you say, but just realize that the whole fate of Danville rests on your shoulders.
Oh my gosh, pressure.
So, that being said, how are you?
I'm doing really well. No, that's a joke. Nobody's doing well. I'm hanging in.
You're hanging in.
Definitely hanging in.
Yeah, and when I reached out to you, I think it was a week and a half ago, and said, Erica, you got to come back in. It was after probably 3 or 4 people that I knew recently, not like over the last year, but 3 or 4 people that I knew recently are like, yeah, I'm getting out. And the more it happened, the more I'm like, what is happening? Because I keep telling people that the people that are left behind are going to be left with a far different community than what we started with. Yes. And I think that's just kind of the way it's going to go. Like, what are you seeing as far as people moving? Are you having younger families move in? Are you having just dual income, no kids, the dinks move in? Or are you having older people? Like, who's moving in? And more specifically, who's moving out?
Yeah. Okay, so my situation being that I have a 13, 15, and 17-year-old, a lot of our friends have similar age kids. Let's call it middle school, high school, some elementary. The older their kids are, the more they are just over it, I find. And that, well, it's kids of all ages, but the number one reason we hear is they are going somewhere, anywhere with schools open. And some of these people have never been to some of the places they're moving, and they go take a trip there and then, go back 3 weeks later and buy a house and do everything else. Other people have no jobs where they're going.
So they literally just sight unseen. They just move.
Yes.
They know they have a house,
yes.
And they're just trusting.
The first call we got was in April, and I was like, oh my gosh, what a leap of faith, but they were just going to do it. And by the way, they ended up not moving to that state. They picked a whole different state in general, but it's a total thing. People are looking for a complete change. And then you rolled into summer with, the fires didn't help, the smoke, all the unrest and the protests and all that. That was pretty rough. Having seen our downtown boarded up was pretty rough on everybody. So we got that. But I would say I can directly link every big board decision, the one made in July, not to open in August, and then in October when we were in the red and then the orange for a hot second and we didn't open. And then now after the new year, the decision made in December, we've met with a bunch of other people. So it's a thing.
So after those 2 board meetings, you got essentially like a flood of phone call or text messages just saying, okay, like we need to set up a game plan.
Yeah. Yes. And it's awful. It's so sad. These are people that I've known. Some of them I've known since elementary school. Some of them we played sports with, or I didn't. I'm not an athlete. Who am I kidding? Brady played sports with at the high school.
Pickleball's legit, though.
Oh, yeah. Sure. I love pickleball. That's my new thing. But these are some of these families. A couple of them, we've just moved into homes in the last 12 months, and they're just going to do it anyway. So
wait, so people literally moved into the area, like pre-Rona?
Or they moved across town. So like one moved from one house in Danville to another house. One couple moved from a rental and purchased something about 8 months ago. So it's just a thing, and it's painful to watch. These are people that I love, my friends, and my family. My sister, which was, I'll start to cry. It's terrible. My parents are just distraught, and she had to get her kids into school, and so she moved to Idaho, like half of Danville, but no, we've done 6 Idaho in the last year and a half. But yeah.
Yeah, you're lucky you didn't have 7. I had a really bad spot there right around the time our mutual friends were moving. I had the Boise idea. It was like right after the fires, and our boys were just going bonkers at home, and I just lost it.
I know.
And so I set up a plane flight to go to Boise to check it out. And then I find out our dear friend had already made plans to go to Boise. I'm like, you didn't tell me. And I ended up walking myself off the edge. But
well, me too. Quite a few times. It's tough to, it's tough to watch everybody leave and people we love. I keep saying it, but we definitely have top destination places. Boise obviously being one of them. We have a lot still going to Texas, some Arizona. We've moved sometimes the kids, and by kids I mean people that are our age, and their parents who are in their 60s and 70s just follow because they want to be with them.
Right.
So we've done like multi-generational, and then we've done some Nashville, Tennessee area, the Carolinas. Our Valley folks definitely like certain places.
Right.
And that's where they're headed.
What are people finding when they get there? Because I think people have talked ever since I've known anything about real estate. When I was like just graduating from high school and looking around like, I'll never be, or excuse me, graduating from college and realizing I'll never be able to buy a house. Yeah. And people talked about, oh well, some people moved to Mississippi or just somewhere else, and they bought some 5,000 square foot place on several acres, and they thought it was going to be great, but they didn't like the area. Right? They didn't like the community. They didn't like all these things, and they eventually moved back. And I feel like you pretty much only heard those horror stories until recently, where people are moving to, say, Boise or Austin, and they're like, oh no, it's fantastic, right? Hot as death in the summer, right, in Austin. And, Boise gets some wildfires, and it's a little bit colder and stuff, but by and large, the reports that I've heard, which are obviously more limited than you, is that people are very pleased with it. It's not as crazy and terrible as it's been made out to be.
I know, and I don't want that secret to get out because I don't want to do any more of these moves for people. I've said before, my old whole business for the last 20 years has been move to Danville, love it like we do, let me help you get connected. Now my whole business model is, I'm so sorry to hear you need to go.
God.
I feel for you. I know you're desperate. I'm not happy about it, but I'll help you. That was pretty much sums up the last 11 months. But to your point, people are finding, new lives elsewhere, and I'm really, truthfully, happy for them. Although,
right.
It's my sadness and their joy on the other end. I do know that sometimes it's difficult to connect in the new community because although they may be hybrid or even full-time and they have some sports, et cetera, it's still not the old normal world where we're having,
right.
A bunch of families over and parties and things like that. So they're slowly meeting new friends and slowly getting connected. But by and large, I think they're liking their decision. I haven't had any phone calls to come back yet.
Right.
Maybe on the other end of this, but we'll see, because we do have pretty darn good weather. On a day like the last couple days, I'm like, oh man, it would be hard to leave this for sure.
Yeah. I mean, unless you walk downtown and enjoy a nice walk and somebody screams at you for being outside.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah, there's that too.
There's that. It's actually your fault going on walks that we're still in lockdown. I don't know if you knew that, but it is. I heard that
just recently, that it's all me.
It's all you.
And the couple times I've been to dinner in the last week outdoors with my own family sitting on the edge of a patio.
Yeah.
I heard that's my fault too.
Yeah, a dad actually reached out recently. I worked with his daughter years ago and love the daughter. She's great.
Yeah.
And I'm wandering through Costco today buying like chicken or something. And I see the daughter and the mom. I'm like, oh my God, hey. Of course, masked up and everything. Mm-hmm. So
it's hard to even recognize each other.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Like I saw her and like, I'm pretty sure that's you. I'm going to go out on a limb. Anyway, so we were chatting and the dad, who's super cool, was like, hey, let's grab a beer sometime. And it was the oddest thing. I'm like, grab a beer? Is that a thing? And then you realize like, oh, I guess we could stand in the parking lot of the Growler and enjoy a beverage distanced, under our masks or something.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. Not going to lie. There's no good answers for anything right now. But I think we've all been saying since the beginning, we're each doing the best for our own family while also looking out for our community at large and our country at large and our world at large. And so just doing our best, obviously.
Would you ever consider, not that I'm proposing this, please don't go through with it, but would you ever consider uprooting your own business and moving? Because look, I'm very similar to you. I've been at tutoring almost 20 years. And And I've been looking at it kind of thinking, oh my God, like there's part of me that just says there's no way I could leave my kids. And by my kids, I mean like my students and my families. There's one mom reached out today. Well, I'm not supposed to say anything, but there's a trip that some people are going on, and she wanted my support with her kid on it. And my point is, I feel like there are aspects of my relationship with the community at large that I could never reproduce. Like, I'll be at my retirement age by the time I had this much time in. Do you find that hesitation the same? Because I mean, people buy houses everywhere. You're obviously a very skilled person with all aspects of it. You and Brady make a fantastic team with logistics and numbers, as well as networking, connections, and understanding value. I feel like you could do that anywhere, but would you ever entertain that idea?
Oh my gosh, I guess the whole thing is never say never. But to answer your question, right now we're not. But it is a challenge. You're correct. Our entire business has been, we went to these schools. I went to Greenbrook, Charlottewood, San Ramon, as did he. I love that we run into people that we went to school with. I love that being connected to our community and our church and our clients. And I just love that my dentist is also a client of ours. Like, everything is so interwoven, and I love that. And I've always been super proud to say that I'm from Danville and I'm from this area, and we have a banner at the high school as we speak on the football field there that we've had there for the last year. So definitely a source of pride for me. And so it's very hard to consider disconnecting from that and pulling away and trying to recreate that somewhere. In fact, if we ever did do something, I don't know that I would do real estate somewhere else, because I feel so passionate about it here. There's been moments in time in the last year that we've said to each other, do you know how to write a resume? No, I haven't written a resume. We need some help, because we're going to have to.
My resume would be one line. That's
right?
all. I've never done anything else. I'm
sales.
Like, tutor.
I know. So we've talked about reinventing ourselves elsewhere. I mean, it's tempting just to go open a brewery somewhere, or to go do something different, which would be a fun adventure. But as of now, I feel like I have to stick it out as long as I can and fight to get to the other side of this and reclaim some, if not all, of the town of Danville and the life that we had that I loved. I loved my life. February 2020.
Right.
So it's a little challenging right now.
I literally remember being in the growler at the end of February. Maybe it was even the first week of March, mm-hmm. right around there, plus or minus 4 days. After training at Danville Jiu-Jitsu and hanging with my buddies, and they're all saying, oh yeah, man, we're going on lockdown. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? They're like, yeah, we're going to be trapped in our houses for 2 weeks. I'm like, what do you mean? Because I don't read the news. I don't follow. I'm not one of the people that compulsively checks CNN or Fox or anything at all. So I knew that, obviously you knew in February that there was something going on, but I was not hanging on any politician's words or anything like that. So, yeah, thinking back to those times, I think back to sitting in the growler with my closest friends, after we trained, or just hanging out in the parking lot on Saturdays and just seeing everybody, and you realize how much love you had for the people that you were surrounded by. Because we really picked our crew, like they were our people.
And I have those crew too. And some of them have moved, and some others have contacted me just recently in the last few weeks, and some of our dearest friends, and they're all asking me for the painter's number, and they're all getting the carpet done, and they are getting before I came in here, I thought I'd take a look at kind of our whiteboard of what's coming,
right,
or not coming. Hopefully not coming, truthfully.
Right.
And there are 5 families since in the last 2 weeks that we've met with. 2 that are going to do it anyway, and 3 are just kind of waiting and prepping their home, waiting for something dramatic to change. They're kids that once were kind of hanging in a little bit last fall or even last summer. They're not hanging in so hot anymore, and they just can't put up with it anymore. Some, like I said, are getting completely new jobs. Others are fortunate and able to take their job that's already remote, and just go to a different place. We've had people that don't even tell their company they've moved. it's
They're like, can you come in? Actually, I can't.
I can't. We have, yeah. So we've had that go on. So yeah, definitely. I don't mean to be Debbie Downer. I always feel like I'm such a negative Nancy, Debbie and Nancy. But it's tough to have these, like, I feel like secret meetings. We park down the street so their neighbors don't see our car because it says
my God, you
hobby
do?
in the. Oh, absolutely. We are very discreet about who we meet with, because not everybody has the opportunity to move their job, and they have to do what they got to do, and get where they got to get. But
You got to do what you got to do. And it's not, I mean, obviously, I understand the whole idea of like, hey, look, can you park down the street? Because you don't want, some people just don't want to share that struggle. And I think there are so many people that are just soldiering on trying to get through this and through the darkness that I think we have undervalued the struggle people are going through. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, for instance, I'm chatting with this girl, one of my students, later this month, but she's in a leadership position, and because she's in leadership, she is called upon to write letters to families who've experienced loss of students. And she said that she has been writing a letter or two a week. And if you think about that, you don't hear about this stuff, and you kind of wonder, like, wait, this can't be right. And what's happening is obviously that these things happen. Families don't want to talk about it. They don't want to share it. And so it gets swept under the rug. And people continue to worry about, what if I were to get sick? And value the unknown and uncertainty of the future and the risk associated it. And devalue, obviously because they don't know about it, but they're not valuing. It's like, what if I told you that there were 20 teenagers in our immediate vicinity who committed suicide this year? What if I told you that?
Well, that doesn't include the ones that didn't do it successfully, but I do know people and families who've had to put their kids in different hospital settings, etc. And you'll get the argument that schools and sports aren't these kiddos' only issues, and sometimes they had suffered from depression before, just different things, but it's not helping at all. The lack of is not helping, and it is absolutely contributing to it. And anybody who believes otherwise, I just don't think they either haven't known anybody yet, and good on them, but it is a problem. It's a major problem. And so that's the desperation I feel that families are forced to take into consideration. I mean, your option is to either keep on keeping on with remote till who knows how long, try to get into a private school spot, which, as we all know, is totally nearly impossible. And believe me, we've tried.
Right.
And as a lifelong Danville Go SRV USD person, that is painful to me, because at one point in time I told my kids they weren't allowed to go to any college that didn't the colors weren't green and gold, because I have so much of it, and we're also A's fans, and so that's how deep.
What is that, like Florida University? I mean, where are you going to go?
Well, Reese wants Cal Poly.
Cal Poly,
that's green
right.
and white, so that's acceptable too. But my point is, it's like it runs deep here for us, and then the third choice for us would be to uproot our company or fold it, move somewhere else, reinvent ourselves at age 43, put our kids in new schools, and move my mom and dad with us, my grandma with us, because she's in a facility here. And then we would have to leave our daughter in California, our oldest, who's going to be in college next year. She only applied to California schools, despite my urging to please consider some other schools, because the experience in California, we can pretty much guarantee, will look completely different than a school next fall in, let's call it, Texas or anywhere. That will be a more traditional college experience than what her freshman year will be next year. Even if they say they're going to be in campus, it will definitely look different. So, but she doesn't want to, and that's fine. That's her choice. But anyway, that we would have to then leave my older daughter. So when I start thinking of all that, it sways me back to staying here and fighting for the town I love. But it's tempting to kind of go down that path. Our middle daughter knows every house on Zillow in the country. The other day we were moving to Corpus Christi, Texas. She's never even been to Texas. She's moved in her head 1,000 times, but when it gets close to actually talking about it, we all chicken out. So we are, as of now, here to stay. So circling back to that, I guess, because people ask me that all the time. By the way, people ask us because we, doing what we do. They want to know if we're on the move too.
But what's amazing about it is that people, I feel like there's this growing disconnect in the community. And part of the disconnect is what there are lots of small businesses and entrepreneurs that live here, right? And people that may work for a company but are kind of self-employed. Like if you were a realtor for,
There you go, you got it.
I got you. If you were a realtor for, say, Kohler, whatever,
Yeah.
right? You would essentially be self-employed even though you're working for them. So there are a lot of people whose fate rests in their hands and they live or die by the sword. And then there's a different portion of the population who is not like that. And I feel like there's this growing disconnect. And I think that's, so you got into this, wrangle with people, or excuse me, some people on Facebook. It's not everyone.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it all day because it was so shocking the way things played out with you, because you are an infinitely reasonable person. You are the sweetest person I know.
Oh.
And it's kind of like, well, I know a lot of jerks, so don't get too excited about that. But
this is a nice end to what was a otherwise really tough last 24 hours. So
Right.
I'll take the compliment.
Right.
But thank you.
And I was thinking about it over and over again because it's kind of like it's so odd to me that people would have a problem with being compelled to do something for employment, because there's such a large portion of our community that it's like, look, you do it or you don't. And like, if you do it, you get a paycheck. If you don't, you don't. For instance, when I started coming back in July, okay, and I was doing in-person classes, and my wife and I were going back and forth about it because she's understandably cautious.
Absolutely.
And I take it very seriously in my classroom. Like, look, if we're going to have HEPA filters, we're going to have all this stuff. And she was emphasizing, look, can't we just keep going remote, or can't we just do this, or can't we just do that? And I finally told her, like, look, the number of people calling and verifying beforehand that we would have an in-person, that I would personally be teaching in person. If we don't do that, they justifiably will not engage our services, and that's their right, and that should be their decision. And if I'm not offering that, I've told them, like, if we get closed down for some reason, I will refund the remainder of your tuition. You don't, obviously, like, this is what you want. And for me, that really made sense. And when I explained it to her, she was like, okay, look, we got to do what we got to do. I don't like the risk, but I understand. And we have our own health issues in our family, and we were not looking at it from the standpoint of like, oh, we're immortal because we have little kids and you and I are both
Absolutely
healthy.
not.
Like we have considerations as well. So again, for me to especially being a teacher, it's very hard for me to understand the idea that I essentially own my job, that it's mine, that I'm entitled to students coming through the door, because that's not the way it is. And I feel like for you and for other people, it's kind of like you're not entitled to a single client that you get, and I'm not saying anybody has a sense of entitlement. I think there's just a difference in philosophy or understanding of what employment is.
Yeah. Well, and your job is also sales in some way too, right? Because you are selling your services. And so anybody who's ever done sales, you're really just as good as your last sale, right? Like we say we're unemployed every single month. Right. We have to kind of drum it all up from scratch. And so obviously we were remote in March and April. We were completely shut down. No title companies. The recording offices were closed for like a week.
How unbelievable.
It was crazy.
Basic government,
no inspectors
services.
could come out. No appraisers
Right.
could come out. I mean, that was March and April. 29th, they opened up that we could begin showing property with all these different protocols.
So let's be very clear. Zero income.
Yeah.
Right?
The only things that were in the pipeline that were closing, but we couldn't get them to close because moving
Right.
companies weren't coming out. I mean, it was terrible. And then they've kind of put in these measures, and we're still living with these same things. I don't know if you've probably not. You're not buying a house right now, so you probably don't know the way it works right now. But it's by appointment only. One realtor, two people from the same household. We all sign a form the morning of saying we feel okay today. I don't think I've been exposed, and
Right.
there's risk in the world, and I'm going out. And then we mask up and we go in by appointment only there's like a system, like an open tables type system. We book appointments and take clients out. We have to drive 2 cars. I mean, we've been doing this safely. I don't know if I like that word anymore, but we've been doing it as best as we can since April, and it seems to be working pretty well. But you better bet I'm scared to death. I'm in people's homes where they sleep and breathe. A lot of them don't go away for the weekend. They still come home at night. I'm in their personal bathrooms and spaces. I'm not touching anything. I'm doing my best. But yeah, there's risk in that. And then I'm with a client, albeit 10 feet away and with a mask on. We have to see a variety of clients. And early on, we tried to do some Zoom listing appointments, and it only went well if I knew you previously. Everything else was a disaster. Sales and schooling, there's a lot of things that cannot be done for the long haul remotely. It's an in-person, I believe we are relational creatures that need eye contact and to see each other's facial expressions, etc. So everything else is just a Band-Aid until that full in-person experience is back.
Right. And that's again, I think this is kind of at the crux of it. You have to acknowledge that, look, if you want this listing, if you want to help this person, if they want to engage your services, there are risks that you're going to have to take. And you have a grandmother that, I love, they warm my heart. I cry almost every time when I see you guys like holding signs outside the old folks' home, like all of those things, because you know that you're living in the world with risk, and she can't engage in that world, right? Like she's in a bubble.
She has not left her place since like March 5th or something like that.
Right.
And then we barely see my parents. We see them outdoors. We laugh. We have a 2,900 square foot house, thank goodness. And we hang out in the garage because the door's open. They bring their camp chairs, and I mean, we're all masked up. Again, we're doing our best. I have the 3 kids. Each one of them has one friend for the most part that they've been able to see during this. And those friends, for the most part, we're seen outside, and we're all doing everything. And I want to be honor and protect my clients as well. I don't want this thing. I don't want to give it to anybody. We know people who've had it. It's awful. I think we're all in agreement at this point in time, on that fact. Where we disagree is how to best do that, and also keep our children mentally healthy and ourselves mentally healthy as well. There's been moments, I'm such a verbal processor, and I'm an oversharer on Facebook. I wish Facebook could just be pictures of my puppy and my hiking and what I had for dinner. And that's the Facebook I love, and that's it. And we have to.
That's the Facebook I love. That's the Facebook I engage in.
And we definitely use both Instagram and Facebook and lots of different things to sell homes. Especially now, people are sitting at their homes looking for where they're going to move next, and so it's all about the pictures, and it's all about all the online virtual. So I do my best to knock it out of the park with that stuff for our company. And so but so much of Facebook specifically has kind of been a diary for me, a journal through the years, where I do overshare about some of the things I'm experiencing, and a lot of people chime in, and it's kind of like nice to have your community, especially now if we can't have our community in person.
Have no community.
We have no community.
Like maybe you would have met some friends at Pete's or at the Vine or something before, and you would have cried to them or laughed with them or done whatever. But this is your community, right? And it's so, the exchange in question was so odd to me, because it's kind of like, here Erica is just spilling her heart, and she's struggling, and this is the only community, real large community, that people have left. But it's also a community that breeds the most vitriolic, horrendous communication. Like I was asking my wife, I'm like, could you imagine if Erica was at the Vine crying to her friends, and a woman at the table next to her, kind of knew her, leaned over and said the things that this woman said? Like, could you ever envision that? And it's kind of like, of course not. That's not reality. But it is on social media.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunately the dark side of social media, as we all know, and it's gotten darker and darker. And, we all have our moments, and it's challenging. But I do share in large part, again, like it's because it's a journal, but I also find that people do reach out and share their stories as well. And I received so many texts and emails and phone calls today, and just concern. And a lot of times when I share something big and hard that's on my heart, I'm actually able to get up a lot better the next day and power on. Right. So it's a kind of a therapy for me as well. So the other thing is, I've noticed through the last 11 months, a lot of people's reality is so different than mine. I've had people say to me, my life hasn't changed very much. You must be killing it because real estate's so busy. I mean, some just really interesting things. And I'm like, whoa, they had no idea how difficult it is to have a senior in high school who's had nothing senior-ish, and believe me, those poor leadership kids try. They do porch drops. There's moms out there trying to put together stuff. And
Oh, sure.
But
People
yeah,
are going Herculean efforts.
it's crazy. And so I'm grateful for all of that, but let's get real. No junior prom, probably no senior ball. We don't know what graduation looks like. I mean, these are the things. It's just, I want to scream, it's not fair. And there's nothing that will make it fair, really, because at this point in time, it's really, the kids I know have one foot out the door towards college and they're just limping through the finish line. But we do have, it's just sad. And it's sad for my sophomore who doesn't have any sports. And it's sad for, it's just sad for everybody. And we know that. The hardest part for my kids is why can my cousin in Pennsylvania go to a soccer tournament? Why is our family in Texas 5 days a week? Why is our family in Orange County in school, public school?
Yeah, right.
And so those are the questions I can't answer because, I do answer it with, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You're right. It stinks and I'm sorry. And that's about all I can say. And they're awesome. They get up, they do their work. Reese has a job now. Like they definitely, they try hard, and I'm really, really proud of them. And on the surface, looking at their grades, for the most part, it doesn't seem that bad as far as academically. But there's definite learning loss in our family, and you will be helping Lucy catch up because what she'll need to know to take these tests going forward. She does want to go to school out of state, and so her situation will be different. So I will be paying for professionals to help fill in the gap for years to come. But that is not everybody's reality. And so it makes me really angry that we think it is.
You know what's, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go for it.
I've been thinking about this a lot. That actually is everyone's reality, because the wealth shift that's about to happen from everyone in the community with kids into some private entity to educate their children is going to be astronomical. I do not think people recognize, like, nobody's getting out of this alive. Where the tens of thousands of dollars that parents are going to have to spend for their students annually moving forward, it's going to be staggering.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, this is not a time to be investing in needlessly tens of thousands of dollars in education. I mean, that's why we moved here. Good schools, right? And if you have a third grader or fourth grader or fifth grader right now and they're getting hosed, even if they're doing, quote, okay, they're not going to be fantastic in like 2 years or 3 years from now. There are gaps in knowledge that are developing and chasms that are coming open that you're not going to be able to bridge. You're not going to be able to help unless you're literally sitting there essentially homeschooling or co-educating your kid. The distance learning it's impossible that an elementary school kid is picking up everything they can unless somebody's staring over their shoulder. Okay, and I know somebody's out there like, my fifth grader is doing great. Great for you and your fifth grader. That's fine.
That makes me so happy when that's the honest truth. I'm really happy for those families. Hopefully there's families out there that's their reality, but like we keep saying, that's not everyone's reality.
This is the thing. I don't think it's a majority of the population's reality. And what's more is those people, the majority of the population, who either are outwardly struggling or just eking along, not the quote, I'm thriving. For those people, the wealth shift over the next 8 years or 10 years of education is going to be shocking. Like in 2000, tutoring kind of like came onto the scene. And then 2010, there were, like an army of tutors out there. And there's no entry into tutoring. So you could walk out tomorrow and say, hey, I'm a tutor. And because of that, people have a lot of horror stories and stuff.
Absolutely.
And that's why people are very cautious. So they're like, okay, well, how long have you been doing this? And, do you have referrals and things like that? They need to ask very specific questions. But it's going to be so shocking in the years to come. I don't think people realize it. And I've been looking at it because I've worked with students, again, in the past who had hiccups in their education. And I saw how it played out in high school. I'm like, oh, this is not. And the parents can literally point to it. They're like, oh, in fourth grade, this happened. Or in second grade, we were in a charter school and she missed essentially like a year of math. And they just limp along. Yeah. And then they feel really dumb. Because, again, let's be really clear. Once a second or third or fourth or fifth grader gets behind in something and they get designated as like not successful, and then they just keep getting reinforced, not successful, that becomes them, right? They internalize that really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Like I did that with English. I was just like, oh, I'm bad at English, until I got to college, and I killed myself to get better at it. But it's gonna be a really odd thing because those with resources are going to stand out even more now in our community. And they're already standing out with the people that were able to get their kids into private school. They're going to stand out even more in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. And when they hit high school, it will be painfully obvious who is taken care of academically in this time frame and who was not. And that will likely be people who have one or both parents at home to help, or they were in private school. Both cases are examples of people who have great resources or remote jobs that were incredibly flexible and kept paying them.
Mm-hmm. So who's speaking up for those who do not, who that is not their reality? I'm starting to definitely feel a parent community that is speaking up for not just our own kids, but for all kids everywhere, not just in California, but everywhere. How can we work together to problem solve this? Because let's all agree the vaccine is taking too long. It's not a magic bullet, blah, blah, blah. And neither is hybrid, by the way. I know going back hybrid, people...
Not a magic bullet.
No, we know people all over in hybrid who say it's not that great, but it's something.
It's a start.
And it's an option, right? So
right.
we are the only community here that, in terms of, I'll just speak to our valley, where there's only one side's choice being listened to.
Well, Erica, truthfully, who would speak up? You, in good faith, in all honesty, nobody could misrepresent you as a person. Anybody who knows you knows who you are, what you're made of, your character. And you say something from your heart in good faith, and you tell people nobody has to read it. It was a long post. Nobody had to take the time to read that, right? And what happens to you? You get misrepresented, you get accused, you get criticized, you get multiple people coming at you. You know what I was most shocked about? I was most shocked that more teachers and people involved in education didn't come forward immediately and say, hey, listen, I have not volunteered to go back to hybrid. I have my own reasons for wanting to stay at home, but this person is not representing my views. I don't think you're a bad person. I love your kids. I love you. This is terrible for the whole community. Because just saying, I don't want to die and this is a personal attack on everyone, it's like, what kind of community? I reject that. I categorically reject that as a representation of the teachers who in good faith are like, look, I have health concerns. I love your kids. I want to be back too. I'm just worried for myself.
Absolutely.
Justifiably, nobody's saying don't be worried, right? But to come at you, of all people, you are the least antagonistic person I know.
I think at this point in time, people feel attacked, and so it was kind of then game on, if that makes sense. And I know the names of quite a few people that were in that conversation, and a lot of them are teachers, and they were saying some awesome things about going back and making this work and fighting for our kids. They just weren't saying that they were teachers. And we know why, both of us know why, because we both know teachers that when they speak up, other teachers that are hopefully in the minority bash them. And so there's teacher to teacher bashing going on. What world are we living in? We should
shame on them.
We should
honestly,
all be working together.
We should not be looking at each other and saying your opinion is not valid. Your experience is not valid. I devalue you and your crisis. Yeah. It does not matter as much as my crisis. Shame on them. We can all look at each other and say, hey, Erica, you want to go back? Guess what? I met Todd. I don't want to go back. I respect your crisis. I respect your family. It's not my jam. I pray we can find a way through this that reconciles both of our needs. That's fine.
And there was some of that, and I respect those conversations, and I feel like we've got to get to a place where we can talk to one another civilly and disagree on what the plan should be or how it should go or whatever, because we have to keep making progress. And I think that's where people have lost hope in the lack of progress,
Right.
and which is why I get the phone calls that I do. It's the lack of hope that whatever the current measure is will be enough. And people are just losing hope for the fall, truthfully, And a lot of people that I've talked to say hybrid in the fall will not be enough. It's just not going to be enough. So they're making plans. And so that's why there's so much pressure to figure out. And I know they can't tell. This is an ever-changing, ever-moving target that we're this virus and trying to figure out and stay ahead of it. We're not ahead of it, etc. But the fall question now, even more so than going back right this minute, is what I'm dealing with from a real estate standpoint. People are so excited that their houses have gone up in value so much, and they think that will go on indefinitely. That is in large part because of the interest rates being so stinking low, and because of the people from the South Bay, the peninsula, and the city that were moving here before but are now desperate to move here. And those people we've moved some fabulous families to town. I have to tell you about this cute couple that we moved to town. They have school-age kids, and they are so happy. I ran into her on a hike, and she's like, I just love it here. And I was with my senior friends.
Yeah, just stay off Facebook.
I don't think she is. That's probably why she loves it here. But it was just what I needed to hear. There are people that are here that love it and that are going to stick around. But you asked me earlier, a lot of people we moved to town have no kids or one toddler. So the whole school question is not really there.
They know it'll be resolved in 3 years.
Exactly. So they're not really worried about it. But the number one reason I used to hear people moving here to this area was for our schools. And it'd be funny when I'd get somebody from like across the bay that would say, well, which school do you like, Greenbrook or Baldwin better? And I'm like, I would send my kids to any school in this entire district. You don't have to play the little, do some people like a principal better? Yes. Do some people have a favorite teacher? Yes. But I would send my kids, and I used to say that just constantly. So my concern is that we need to keep our school district elevated to that status of desirability to keep awesome families moving here. And let's get real. Those are the families that fundraise, fill up these
that are engaged,
these ed funds.
Yes.
And cheer on our teachers and cheer on our kids. And those families, I'm afraid some of them are moving, and I'm not quite sure that you said at the beginning, what the dynamic will be kind of on the other side of this.
Well, guaranteed, if you have people that are moving here for reasons other than academics, then those reasons will take priority as they live their lives here.
Yeah.
Right? If you have 90% of people moving here because they like the academics, then academics will stay pristine because that's their priority. What happens when a larger portion of the population just doesn't care? Right? What happens when it's too late? Right? I mean, how many thousands of people have moved out with their kids, and how many thousands more will move out come the fall?
Well,
and it's like, how is this going on?
I've said in a variety of places, that we worked with 16 sellers last year, and 13 moved out of state. If that gives you any idea. A couple shuffled around here locally. Our sellers can't get moving vans right now. There's major price gouging going on to do out-of-state moves, because you think about it, the vans move out, but the van doesn't return.
Right.
A national van company.
Yeah, nobody's coming back from Tennessee.
So it's a thing. It's a major problem. We have to forewarn people when we're listing their house. Look, you got to get a plan in action, or you have to get rid of all your items and start your life over. So it's definitely concerning. I'm hoping that we can rectify the situation and come out on the other side as a united, strong, awesome district, because a lot of the teachers that I know one by one that I can name by name and see in my heads, they are killing themselves trying to make this work for the kids. And most of them aren't going anywhere, although we do know teachers that we have had conversations with that for their own reasons have had it and want to be back and cannot teach in person. They do not like teaching remotely. It's not working for them. No one's listening, and they're frustrated. So that is true. But the majority of these awesome teachers that I can see in my head, I believe one day I will set foot on campus and see them again. If I didn't believe that, I have no hope. But it's getting harder and harder to hold on to that with each passing week and month with very little progress made. And I think that's the collective feel of the parent community right now.
And if we don't, it's going to be impossible to make progress. Okay, say there are 5 people in this room. We're all masked, by the way. 5 people in this room, right?
Of course.
And we all want something different. If one person just slams her or his hand on the table and says like, well, you all are Nazis. And another one slams the hand down and says, I don't want to die. And another one slams the hand down and says, I don't want my kid to die. Right? Like we throw out the absolute end of the discussion comments. We make zero progress. We invalidate each other. We go straight to my crisis is more valuable and important than your crisis. And because of that, I don't have to listen to you, right? We dehumanize people. We don't treat people with dignity. None of this would be happening if we saw people face to face. If everybody on your Facebook thread was in the auditorium in a big circle staring at each other and one person spoke at a time, there's no way, because we would be human beings to each other. We would see tears. We would see anxieties. We'd see listening. You'd see people really listening to you, like, I hear you.
Well, that's why I tell my kids to pick up the phone, or better yet, go see your friend face to face back in the old days when you have something going on. Stop the texting back and forth.
Yes.
Because people say things that are hurtful. They say things they don't mean. They can't take it back. And believe me, I've been guilty of this. I mean, this thing has brought out, I've never thought of myself as an angry person, ever. And I've been so filled with rage over what's going on in my personal household. And again, my kids are hanging in okay. I mean, whatever okay means. But they've got the 2 of us at home. They have nice computers. They have, there's just so many things that they have that other kids don't. I'm just worried about the other kiddos outside of my own walls. And I feel like we all have gotten so wrapped up in our own situation, and you get that rage mixed in. And again, I'm not innocent ever in all of this ever, but I hope to not be engaged too much in it. But it's hard when you're fighting for, I mean, that whole mama bear thing, Papa bear. It's like when you're fighting for your kids and you feel like they're hurting, and you don't have the answers, and there's nothing you can tell them to make it better. And all we do is talk about, well, what if I got an apartment in the Sacramento area and could come work with Dad on the weekends, and then Dad could manage business during the week, and you could go to school up there. Like these are things we talk about. Like other parts of California where we have family that are more likely to open first. And because let's face it, we were the first counties locked down in the country. And I've said since March, we'll be some of the last to be let out. And it's because of the mentality and the psyche. We just have more fear around this whole thing. And whether or not that's valid or not, people can debate. It doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter.
It's
the
true.
point is
it's
that
true.
This is the way the population
This is the way our community as a whole, the Bay Area as a whole, has behaved since day one. So everybody is looking for where is more likely to be more normal or close to it come fall. And that's the conversations that are going on in my world daily.
Right. And again, to your point, I am not, nor are you, invalidating people's concerns.
No.
Right? It's not like the teachers that are really concerned are these like evil people just collecting these paychecks on the beach doing distance learning in Tahoe, right? It's not like
but
they're
I've
living...
seen those posts. Have you seen those posts?
I haven't.
I have,
Okay,
and I won't name names, but
soon.
I find
okay, but wait.
I find it insensitive, to say the least.
Yes, perhaps. Okay, but then you have students that are distance learning from the beach too. So yes. I think that one swings both ways.
I agree.
But there's no reasonable person that I've spoken with that is saying people's concerns are not valid. So when I see teachers or educators or essential employees, right, say, hey, I'm really worried, I listen and I'm like, yeah, I believe you. I'm not taking anything away from that. But the question always comes back to, can you perform your service successfully or can you not? And And again, that's not, I go through the same thing. I would never propose that I have a locked in captive client base and customers coming every single day and they can't do anything about it. And then other people don't get that, right? Like, I understand there needs to be wiggle room, and we cannot just like fire all of our teachers and hire new teachers. Nobody wants that. What I think everybody wants, which was what was clear that you wanted, was, look, you were even advocating for teachers having a choice and trying to, we need to work this out together. So here you're emphasizing a more tempered, moderate position than exists currently. You were saying, look, we should give you a choice.
Yeah.
But we also need to figure out a way to get these kids back in school. And even that was not well received. Even that got shouted down. Even you were giving concessions compared to what we have today. And I just kept reading this stuff and I was like, what is happening? Because the whole mantra, which I believe Servia very much believes for the kids, I believe that the people in the union became teachers for
Absolutely.
kids. I believe that. And I hold that so dear in my own heart, because I'm a teacher. That's all I've ever done. Just like you're saying, you'd reinvent yourself. I have no idea what I would do.
I was a teacher. Did I?
You did tell me that.
For 5 years, I was a job share because I had littles and I kept having one every other year. So it was but it was the hardest job. It was so hard to deal with 3,000 questions a day from a second grader. And I couldn't do it.
And keep your cool.
Teachers are like, can I use, or the kids, can I use this pencil? Can I use it, or this pencil? It's like, oh my gosh, pick a pencil. But
any pencil you want.
Any pencil. But I didn't have the patience for it. And Brady was already in real estate at the time, so that there goes that. But teachers are superheroes in my book. And yes. I know I just like everybody, I have family that are teachers. I have friends that are teachers. And because I was a teacher, I have a lot of friends that are currently teaching that are awesome. So nobody's denying those people choice. But the only group of people that have denied choice are the teachers that want to go back and the students that want to go back. And they're giving us this new group thing, small groups. I don't know if you see much about it.
The small cohorts, yeah.
I feel guilty. I reached out and I got a spot. So Jane is one of a few kids.
Oh, you should feel terrible for this.
I do.
Oh,
that there's other people who cannot do what we're doing. Jane doesn't want to do it because she doesn't want to go to school, because she's basically she doesn't realize it, but over the last year, she's definitely just closed in.
Right.
And
she likes her little walls.
Yes, and I see it, and they know I share this information about them, and it's not something I wouldn't say with them right in front of me. So I'm honoring them in that. But she needs to go physically outside of the house. Now, will it go well? I don't know. She may make life so miserable for me after a week or two that I can't put up with that. So who knows? But we're definitely going to give it a chance, if only to make the statement that it can be done, and we're on campus, and it's look, it's, because so many people are doing it successfully in other places, and we can all agree there's cases, and yes, and there's going to be cases for quite some time. But
there are going to be cases for years.
But progress.
Here's the thing that I don't get about how the conversation has shifted, because we always, I'll say we, as teachers, it's always my opinion that teachers really, even at the beginning of their career, and maybe they got jaded later on, but it's like everybody goes into teaching because they like kids. It's for the kids, right? Like if you like working alone, you don't go into teaching, right? And it's not, you have to be brave and courageous if you're going to be a good teacher. You can be shut in, you can be not risk taking, you can be a lot of things and not be as good of a teacher. But all of the great teachers that I've ever had, and the ones I try to model myself after, they were really brave. Mm-hmm. And they taught us how to be brave and courageous. And I look at my students all the time, and they're terrified, and some cry in class, and they're really scared about going to take this test. And I try to remind them that they need to be brave, and I try to encourage them, and I try to tell them, like, it doesn't matter. Like, you just got to go and do your best. And I recognize what a statement that is to tell somebody who's 16 or 17, and this test does affect them. and there are aspects of my life that I worry about, right? Like I do jujitsu, and I've done some really big competitions in the last several years where they're like
I know,
30.
I've been at some.
They're pretty terrifying. What you likely didn't know is, although there were 30,000 people watching, I was crying behind stage. Like, I lose my bananas. And the reason I kept going to those and the reason I kept doing them is because I started thinking about what I always told my kids. I'm like, what kind of person would you be if you're a coward in your own life? You're a coward when it counts for you, and you tell these poor 16 and 17-year-olds to put their hands in the fire. Who are you? And again, everybody's journey's different, right? Like, I don't know how I got into jiu-jitsu, but this is what I do, and for whatever reason,
I love it.
really pushes my buttons. But you don't go into teaching to embody the things that you don't want your students to be. To be a great teacher, you have to be courageous. You have to push students. You have to push students well beyond their comfort level, understanding that their parents might be mad at you, understanding that the kid might be mad at you. But you have to take those risks, because if you're a good teacher, more times than not, if you do it well, that kid becomes stronger and more courageous, and they can go out and do something with their life.
And those are the great teachers we both know and I love,
Yes.
and I'm keeping them in my head when I try to think about, again, life on the other side of this and how can I support them. And it's hard. It's hard all the way around, but
I just don't understand it. I don't understand it at this point. I understand if it's like, look, I'm old, or I'm not going to try to value anyone's reason for wanting. I'm not going to try to devalue anyone's reason or
I know
however they came to the realization that they don't feel comfortable going back. They're all valid to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to take away anything. 100%. You don't want to show up for any reason. That's fine. What I don't understand is how they're saying, I don't want to show up. I understand kids are hurting, but I still own this job. However, for whatever reason you don't want to show up, I support you. And by the way, if I can bring you some chicken noodle soup, if you get sick, I will do it. But if we're going to be great educators, we actually have to be in it for the kids. How do we say that you get to continue down the course that could be hurting students that you so dearly love?
Yeah, it's you make some valid points. It's tough. I mean, I've said for all along, there's no good solutions, but we've got to work together to try to come up with some. It's not okay to keep waiting till next month or next semester or the vaccine gets to whatever percentage of people, and it's never going to be enough, because this thing is real and it's terrible, and we've got to figure out how to live with it and not lose our kids in the meantime, or lose ourselves for that matter, and not take it out on each other. Like, that's the whole thing that's so sad.
That's the point. We can't shame teachers.
No.
We can't shame parents.
No.
We can't shame students. We can't shame anyone, because the shaming leads to people not talking, leads to progress not being made.
Yeah. Well, and I have to tell you, like, for a long time, you could probably pick up on my tone from anything I said on social media or whatever, that I wanted my kids back and that my kids were hurting, and so are other kids that I know, and but I didn't go that far. I kind of stuck to the puppies and the real estate and all the other stuff,
and your
right?
meals.
Yeah, exactly, and what I had for lunch. But it's just, and in fact, it's scary to think that what I say could adversely affect my business and my ability to support my family by making somebody so angry at me that they so-called want to, like, get me canceled or whatever you call it.
Welcome
Like,
to my life.
well, yeah, it's like, it's hard. It's like, even doing this with you, it's like, I don't want to make people I love mad at me, and I don't want to offend people. I want to tell my truth, my reality of what's going on in my house, the people I talk to's houses, the people that we work with, who's moving here, who's moving out, and what those stats look like. Those are just facts. I'm just sharing my fact and my reality. And what we started with is, why is my opinion and my situation any way less important than somebody else's? It's not. I have a voice too, and I want the best for what's going on in my world, plus everybody else.
Right.
So it's,
Right. Here's a question
Yeah.
for you. You have to deal with lots of problems when you're selling a house. Selling or buying a house, you're representing something, and you're likely dealing with couples. And I'm willing to bet not all of those couples are always on the same page. You actually told me once that you showed up to a listing appointment, and the wife was moving out, and the husband was like drunk and didn't want her to leave.
Yeah, we've had some doozies for sure.
So, let me ask you something. How many of those wrangles have been resolved by people not talking?
Oh, none. I mean, obviously, again, we're relational, communicative. Is that the
There
right
you
word?
go. There you go.
There we go. Let's talk about essay words or SAT words. But yeah, that's how we're built, right? So we problem solve by talking kindly to one another and working through things. And
understanding each other.
Absolutely. Thank goodness I'm married to an amazing negotiator and really good problem solver, because truthfully, he's the brains in terms of all that behind solving major issues with appraisals, inspections, etc. I get the fun stuff, but showing property and working with our stagers and stuff like that. But it definitely is a business and a life and a world we live in where we have to work together to communicate and solve problems and not insult one another. And again, I'm not always innocent. I get heated. Everybody gets heated, but
everybody gets heated.
But that's not where we need to go to first.
No.
Yeah.
No. And look, I you know what's interesting? The people that gave you a hard time today. I was on this run. I was actually thinking of I would like to reach out to them, because I would like to know what those people were trying to convey. Because you know what I could envision? I could envision somebody on the other end of that keyboard in tears.
I think so too.
Right? Like somebody just getting so upset. But I had a hard time continuing to envision that, as I saw more and more messages, and it was over a longer period of time. It's look, you get to blast one angry message, but if you keep going over hours, then that's something else. But I think all those positions need to be really understood and communicate. We communicate. If you heard from a teacher who loves teaching, loves the kids, but is look, I don't even see a place where I would feel comfortable going back to school. Wouldn't you at least want to know why? And then maybe with all of our collective minds, we're you know what? I think I figured out a solution for this. Hang on. Work with me here, right? That's how we do it. But I knew right away, that's the dumbest idea you've ever had, Matt, because those people aren't interested in talking. They're interested in being right. They're interested in, virtue signaling and getting kudos and going to the Trump card, right? Going to the I win, Nazi, I die, my kids die, somebody dies, whatever it is. And that's the wrong, again, I shouldn't speak for them. I can't say that they wouldn't come on or look, if you're out there and you don't like hybrid or you don't like in person at all, I would love to talk to you. I'll buy you a beer, whatever you want to do.
Nice.
But
yeah, that's what I love about you. You're an equal opportunity, speak your mind. You've had all different types of people through here.
I just get mad when people try to stop people from talking. That's the one thing that gets me, because that's the one thing that guarantees nobody will find a solution.
Well, I think what's been awesome, I've watched the last, let's call it year, people I know who've never cared about the school board, and I couldn't tell you everybody on our school board before this, people who've never cared about politics in general. We are in a country where we collaborate and we work together and we are all involved, and we kind of had gotten away from that. I know a lot of people just didn't pay attention, and I think this has forced us all to pay attention and wake up who we're represented by. Do they represent our opinions? Do we want to vote for somebody else who does to get into that spot and voice our concerns? That's the system that we live in and the way it works well. And it needs to return to a place of respect. And
yes.
I want to be a part of that and not, believe me, some days I just want to run. I want to run straight to another place. Like I said, all bets are off. I don't know what options we'll have going forward. I'm looking out for my kids. I'm looking at everything here, elsewhere, private, public, fight for the kids, run, It's all on the table. But I'm going to make decisions for my family based on what each kiddo in my family needs. And I expect the same for my teachers and for my students on both sides of the equation. Everybody should have that word, right? Choice.
Everybody should have choice. Everybody should have a voice. Everybody's position should be considered. We need to stop shouting down each other. We need to stop trying to end the conversation with like accusations and all of these things. The only way we see through this, the fastest way we get our way through this, the fastest way is more communication. Because the more we communicate, the more we hear other people, the more other people hear us. That's when solutions come to light.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah, no, and I want the phone calls to stop. I don't want to move one more person away over this. I realize it's affecting me personally because I take on the stress of that and the desperation and then of course I love them, they're leaving, so that has been really challenging as well. I want that to stop. I want everybody to move back.
Right.
It just, that's how I feel, obviously.
Right. And God, man, I hope you don't have to field another call. It's brutal. Erica, listen, I know it's late and I know you got a time frame that you got to get out of here by. Thank you for coming in on such short notice. I appreciate you spilling your guts again. I hope you had a little bit better platform
You're
to
welcome.
express yourself here.
You're welcome. I always love catching up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.